Everyone, welcome. Nice to see you all today out and about in the sun. So let's just take a moment and breathe. We have some big stories that we're going to talk about today. And as our focusing today, I'll be telling you a story in just a few minutes. I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm getting excited about it. So here, just a reminder that our field trip is on Sunday, April 12th. Coming up. So your TA has the departure time for your group now. You'll be meeting at the creamery, bus pull off right next to the creamery, hopping on the bus at your designated time that your TA will tell you. And then you ride over the mountain to Shavers Creek and Stone Valley. You walk around, you have some experiences outside. And then you hop back on the bus and we return you to the same spot at the creamery. So that's coming up on Sunday, April 12th. So look to your TA for your departure time, and then you will be back in the same spot 5 hours after you leave, roughly. So that's there for you. So then I'd like you on your journal page there, 97 for today, I'd like you to reflect on take a moment of quiet to reflect on what are your top 3 priorities for today. What are your top 3 priorities for today? We're going to be bringing this back around later in class, so if you don't take the time to do it right now, then you'll miss out on an opportunity later, and that's your choice, whatever you choose. All right, so top 3 priorities for today. And if they really are priorities, they shouldn't take you long to think about or feel your way into because they're right there, probably on, in the forefront of your mind. And so what I've been offering to you last class and then this class are these hypotheses about the root causes of the environmental crisis. And some of these ideas might be new for you. And some of them might be things that you've thought a bunch about. It's hard to tell, with 300 and whatever people in the room, lots of different experiences and priorities. And so here's the story that I want to tell you. So Ilyav was a soldier in the Israeli forces. This happened quite a ways back. Israeli Defense Force, and his commander took him to the beach and he asked him to scoop up 2 handfuls of sand. And holding those handfuls of sand, he asked Ilyav to clench one fist and leave the other one open. And Ilyav did what he was told to do. And the commander said, okay, now compare the amounts of sand in each hand. Do you have more sand in the hand that is open or more sand in the hand that is closed? And Ilyav checked it out and he said, I have more sand in the hand that is open. And so his commander said, yes, that's true. And so what happens when we hold our hands open, when we hold our possibilities open, when we are open to new ideas and new beliefs and new ways of thinking, we get to hold more possibility. There's excitement in the possibility. The closed hand holds less. When we clench on to our beliefs, when we clench on to the things that we hold so tightly and so dearly to us, those things are important. But what happens if we allow ourselves to expand the possibilities? And so the lesson is that if we remain closed and resistant and shut down, fixed in our habits, then the possibilities for us are not as open as possible. And so as we go through today's class, there's a lot of stories. We've talked about story and how stories shape our beliefs. So today I'm gonna tell you some hard stories. They aren't stories that you haven't heard before, I would imagine, but they are stories that have shaped where our culture has been and where our culture is currently. And it can be a challenging perspective to look at. So I ask that you do your best to hold your hands and your hearts open to the possibility of these connections. We'll be unpacking some of that today. So when we look at this image that we've seen a few times now, the symptoms with those root causes, if you think of an example, this is kind of like a cough, right? A cough, we can have a common cold. You could have asthma. You could have bronchitis. You could have COVID. You could have the flu. You could have lung cancer. All of these different things could cause a cough. And then you dig into what's going on. Why am I coughing? And so bacteria, virus, disease, all different kinds of things. So we're looking at Earth's challenges through this lens of digging deeper into the layers of what's happening. So we've experienced these things. We've talked about the separation from self, the idea that separation from each other, and then separation from Earth, which some folks call ecocide. If you remember back to our choice class, the difference between choosing, you being a whole body approach, and deciding, which is just making a pros and cons list and like cutting off options, that CIDE. So ecocide, to cut off from the ecological, from the natural. So after generations of being disconnected, we're facing this challenge, right? The generations and evolution of innovations, which in so many ways have helped us, have lengthened our lifespan, have made life more comfortable in so many ways, except that the inventors didn't foretell of how these innovations would change our culture and shape how we look at the world around us, right? So today's hypothesis is that the story that our culture has been teaching has created separation. The story that our culture has been teaching has created this separation. So hypothesis, right, takes us back to that scientific method that we looked at so long ago. So we have to think about then, what is culture? How can we play in these ideas that this story that that's persisting, that we're being taught, is the challenge that we're actually facing? So when we look at what culture is, it's this integrated pattern of knowing stuff, right? Of being part of the groups that we're in. When we think about food and art and drama, attitudes, belief, language is a huge one, because that's how we're being taught, where things are being modeled, but more often words are being shared. Language passes our culture down, right? So thinking about maybe the culture of your family, maybe you have favorite foods. When you get together for somebody's birthday, the culture is that you share in and participate in a food that's special to your family. Or you might think about the culture of a religious tradition that you're in and how these different rituals and customs play into that religious tradition. Also, celebrations are part of that. attitudes and beliefs, behaviors are all part of that. Right now, you're in this culture of Penn State, and then all of the subcultures that are part of that. So my workplace has a culture, and thinking about how people interact and integrate with each other, that's all part of the culture. So the American culture is so vast and so almost indescribable with and yet there are stories, there are traditions, there are beliefs that underlie the American culture. Many of you in this room are from other cultures which hold also stories and traditions. And so welcoming, people in to the culture can be challenging because some of those things are just patterns that we live that are ways of being. So thinking about culture, thinking about our stories, particularly I'm going to focus today on American stories since that's where we are and talking about the relationship that that many of us here carry. So I'm going to talk first about Christopher Columbus. May 4th, 1493, the year after Columbus sailed the ocean blue, Pope Alexander VI offered a spiritual validation for the European conquest. He said that in our times, especially the Catholic faith and the Christian religion be exalted and be everywhere increased and spread, that the health of souls be cared for, and that barbarous nations be overthrown and brought to Christianity itself. So this foundation of the doctrine of European purity and supremacy, in those words, in those two sentences, negated the worth and the value of all the other cultures. So passing this story along all over the world permitted European Christians to assume their own supremacy and privilege. And that supremacy went a little like this, arriving in North America, in the United States, not called that at this time. So pigs roamed freely for a long time, just doing whatever pigs will do, and taking over all kinds of forest habitats. People that were trapping as much as they wanted to trap. Beavers were trapped so much in Pennsylvania that they were extirpated. So any beaver that you see now is from a generation that was replanted here in Pennsylvania, cutting and timbering all that they want, taking as many fish as they want, and all of this based on the story, the Christian story of God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl of the air and every living thing that moveth upon the earth, as written in Genesis in the Bible. So this allowed that European conquest. And remember that the Bible, inspired by God, written by humans, sprang forth from a time that was very different than it was in this time. When the Bible was written, it was estimated there were about 300 million people on the planet, and not the billion people that were here at this time. So having dominion, people believing that they understood what they needed to do, their conquest. To subdue, that led to this idea of manifest destiny. Americans had a virtue-bound biblical duty to colonize the West. And that they did, right? So this is the Louisiana Purchase, all of that area in green. So the French people came in and declared that this belonged to them. And then we bought it from them in 1803. That was under President Jefferson. And so we just bought this huge tract of land, and manifest destiny, right? A phrase coined by newspaper editor John O'Sullivan in 1845. The idea that the United States is destined by God to expand its dominion and spread democracy and capitalism across the North American continent. And so a big part of that was the story of slavery in this country as well. So there were people that didn't agree with Manifest Destiny and tried to speak out against it. Andrew or Grover Cleveland, Andrew Carnegie, Mark Twain. And the reason that it was a disputed philosophy was that there were people that acknowledged that there were already people living here. That big green tract of land was not just empty. There were already people living here. These are all of the tribes of the nations of Indians that lived here at that time. And you can see there are lots of the names are small, I know. But look at all of those, the Omaha, the Osage, like these are all people that are already on that land, except the French claimed it and then we bought it. And so what happens with those people? What's happening to their stories? What's happening to their culture? About 60 million indigenous people were here before the landing of Columbus in 1492. Between 1492 and 1900, about 54 million of them, 90% of them died, either at the hands of the white men who were taking over their land or because of the diseases that got passed on from those Europeans coming over that were not, the diseases not familiar to the people that already lived here. Smallpox and measles and influenza. And so these native people really struggled. And yet the European Americans believed that they had the right to create this outright genocide, trying to kill their culture. So the native peoples were living within a different story, belief that they belonged to Earth as part of Earth. And then these Europeans come in. Remember the phrase barbarians? We need to take over the barbarians. And that's just what happened. So because of a different story, right? A misunderstanding of story, this conquest happened in intending to kill their culture. So the Native American boarding schools, the cultural genocide. So I just said that language is an important part of sharing these stories. And so the sharing of the stories often happens in education, in our educational system. So they were taken out of their cultures, they were taken away from their families and put into these boarding schools. The motto of the Carlisle Indian School, which was right here in Pennsylvania, 1879, was kill the Indian to save the man. Kill the Indian to save the man. There were 519 of these Indian schools in the United States and 126 of them in Canada. So they shaved their heads, they took them away from their families, they wouldn't let them speak their native languages or practice their native traditions, in essence, taking away their culture. So different iterations of this same story has happened over the course of time. And many of you know those stories, minoritizing women or Black people, people of other cultures, minority being minimized, having a lesser role, not being able to connect to their culture. Success was measured when the group was overpowered. Success. Success. What does success look like today in our culture? What do you think success looks like in our culture today? Take a moment and jot down your notes in your journal. And then when you have yours, feel free to talk to your neighbor. I'm all right, but I'm tired. All right. What about success? What what does success look like in our culture right now? Is there anybody who'd like to speak to this? Thank you.
For me, something that is going to be like a milestone in showing me that I've like become a success in my life is kind of owning my own home. To me, like being a success, you want to try to have your own space. You want to have like a domain where it's like kind of your place, like because you're going to want to have like a family there that you can protect and have in something that belongs to you, so you're not like always at risk of like not having a place to go. So I think definitely owning your own place is a big part of success.
Thank you for saying that. Oh, yes.
For me to be successful means I'm gonna make a lot of money. I've been determined to do this ever since I was younger because I feel like I've been in situations with my family before where we've kind of been like tight on money and I never want to feel that way again. And by making a lot of money, I also want to be able to give back. I feel like I'm not able to give back as much as I want to, and I'd really love to do that. So not only do I want to make money for myself and travel the world and buy all the things I've always wanted to buy, but I also want to give back and make sure that people don't have to feel any sort of way.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say to live a successful life, you gotta like always be comfortable in your life, like be comfortable with the people around you, like the friends, the family. Um, and just always make sure that you're like whatever's going on, like you actually are pretty comfortable in your life, especially with like who you are as a person. I think it's
Mhm.
important with stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so in no specific order, I would say that to be successful, I would need to have influence, values, and money. Because with influence, you have the respect of multiple people, like of many people,
I
which can gather you enough power to make you feel like more successful yourself, right? And with values, right? Actually, no, let's start with money first. With money, you can have what you need for a house and a family, but with money and influence, you should always have value because then the values you can use to help others.
thank you
Okay.
for saying so.
I think that success today is a bit scary because like when there's a lot of success with people and like you become so powerful, sometimes it turns into like greed and a lot of other things. And I think a prime example is like Diddy. Like that dude has so much money. He could do anything he wanted to do and like it ended up being horrible and how many people he hurt on the way. So I think it's like a slippery slope with success.
Thank you.
Did he do it?
Okay. So I said like you have to be like like flexible if you want to be successful,
Mhm.
especially like with the changing times. Like, I feel like things like money like come and go, but like times are also like constantly changing that like you kind of have to be willing to like adapt to like your situation.
Thanks for bringing that up. Certainly helpful. One more.
Yeah, I think a lot of like I think money and power is a little bit superficial. I say the biggest indicator for success is having a mission and a purpose to do something positive and make change. I think money is a tool to do that. I think power corrupts. So I think having a purpose and a mission is kind of a predication to have the drive to even acquire the money to get to that purpose. So, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. I feel like we could talk about this and you can talk about this like in your lab groups and stuff. Continue this conversation because I think it's really important. So I'd like to do a thought experiment with you at this time. So put on your imagination caps. Take a deep breath. We're going to go on an adventure. Here we go. Pretend you are extraterrestrials cruising placidly through deep space when suddenly you come upon planet Earth. Your team's superior powers allow you to quietly land unnoticed in the United States and blend in with the Earthlings. Your first task is to observe Americans enacting their lives in a variety of settings: schools, homes, supermarkets, job sites, sporting events, prisons, churches, etc. In so doing, you soon notice that Americans spend a lot of time working, receiving something that they call money in return for their labor. You note as well that they use money to acquire all manner of things: houses, cars, clothes, food, gadgets, furnishings, property, and on and on. By tracking their daily conversations, you deduce that these Americans believe that the access to stuff ensures their well-being. So it is that you summarize the story of this culture with the formula work, money, stuff, well-being. You name this story economism because in this culture it appears that the purpose and meaning of life is viewed primarily through the lens of economic activity. Working, consuming, investing, inventing, manufacturing, buying, selling, and so forth. As your investigation continues, you find that the central purpose of schools in this society is to train young people to join the workforce, thereby ensuring that the economy thrives. You also discover that the primary role of government is to promote policies ensuring that businesses flourish. As for planet Earth, it is regarded primarily as a supply house for raw materials and a depository for waste. Your team goes on to visit other countries and concludes that economism is a global phenomenon. It is at this point that Mission Control directs you to determine how well this story of economism is working. Are people happy? Do their lives have significant meaning and purpose? Are they generous and caring toward one another? Is their home, planet Earth, becoming ever more healthy, vibrant, and beautiful? Seeking answers, your team sets to work, this time surveying all possible research archives and media outlets to assess the effects of economism on planet Earth and her people. Despite the immensity of this task, it soon becomes evident that the health and well-being of planet Earth is in decline. Climate chaos, widespread extinction, growing ocean acidification, widespread freshwater contamination, along with soil loss, provide plenty of evidence. As for Earth's human inhabitants, your team discovers massive inequalities in wealth distribution, with the richest 1% of humans possessing more wealth than the rest of humankind combined. Strife and violence are prevalent in many households and communities, and a multitude of conflicts among nation-states. Your team is forced to conclude that economism creates separation rather than connection, suffering rather than healing, stress rather than harmony. In your report to headquarters, you posit that all this unhappiness comes because economism is designed to care about one thing, that is, maximizing income. It doesn't care if you are happy or miserable, if you are fulfilled or hollow, if you are humane or brutish, if you are gentle or spiteful. It doesn't care if the oceans dry up and die or teem joyously. It doesn't care if the skies turn to ash. It doesn't care if you, me, our grandkids, or the planet dies young or old, or if any of us live or die at all. It just doesn't care. Economism wasn't designed to care. Your team finishes its report declaring if humans continue to declare their allegiance to the story of economism, their civilization will collapse in an apocalypse marked by unimaginable suffering. Economism is just a story. Success is just a story. Economism. A term used in the analysis of capitalist economics to point to the social and psychic damage that occurs when all of life's richness, wonder, and complexity is reduced to merely economic dimensions. So, how that story shows up. The empty hole. We talked about not enoughness as a marketing opportunity, and how this disconnect requires and takes resources from the environment. You're not okay, but buy this and you will be. You're not okay, but do this and you will be. You're not okay, but continue to do these things and you will be. Addiction and greed were mentioned when we brainstormed root causes and then mentioned in this story of success. So thinking of addictions as an empty hole, trying to fill that empty hole with busyness and stuff and video games and phone scrolling and food and drugs and phone and shopping. But those are the symptoms, right? Those are never addressing the root cause. The whole is that the story is that we're not enough. that this story of success that much of our culture, not all of our culture, but a lot of our culture carries, it's a result of what's going on inside of us, right? The war inside creates wars outside. So we've already looked at this image or a similar image, a mall image, and you had wonderful comments about what that, what that represents. The fossil fuel consumption, the greed, the disconnect, that empty hole that shopping provides, getting the stuff. And then why do we have so much stuff, right? It's a story of separation. We talked about in the chemical class, the idea that beauty is a construct created by the capitalist system to make you see flaws that don't exist, to sell you things that you don't need. Not pretty, not handsome, not attractive enough. So all of these stories interweave. So when we look at that story of economism, then what is the purpose of school? What's the purpose of government? What's the purpose of college? What's the purpose of Earth? Right? So as we look at those, talking about how we're viewed as consumers rather than citizens, that there is this disconnect. So take a moment and talk to your partner about this. After we do this, get their responses, then we'll call up that billionaires list. Did you load that? Great, thanks. I was gonna say if you didn't, it's not a problem. This class always is like so much, too much. Okay, great, thank you. Oh my gosh. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this? Thanks, Bella.
Thank you. I think the purpose of college today, which is like I'm about to like condense it down, it's like a really small issue, and it's like a widespread thing. But I think like the purpose of college like nowadays is like to like get in line. Um, like what's really math? I gotta learn that. Like why? I don't know. But like I kind of want to go back to like the last question where it was talking about like I forgot what the last question was, but I know like my answer to it. Like specifically like like film production and stuff. Um, I think like you just have to like assimilate to be successful. You have to like get in line. Like we think about like provocative movies. You think about some like I don't know Sinners, which isn't like really provocative, but in order for it to be that way, in order for it to get out and be popular, it kind of has to be a certain way. It kind of has to be, you know, easy enough to be like consumed to like be out there. So it kind of has to be like co-opted. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about. Thank you.
I feel that it starts from government. Like they view us primarily as numbers. The school system is designed to teach us in a certain way. You have a lot of different educators that, hey, that goal's too high. When you get to college, it's a regulated system. The government looks at Earth as primarily resources, numbers. How much of this do we have? How much of that do we have? So it's primarily of numbers and a set goal to kind of um, have us obey and or perform in a certain system.
Thank you.
In a broader sense, I think that it's kind of a societal need now to have a lot of money. Like, I think a lot of like the reasons that we're all saying that money is a big part of success is because like in order to travel, in order to support your family, and in order to like give back to your community, you need money to do all that stuff. So it's kind of like it's become such a big part of life because it's a need. It's not really a want at this point. Like no one's gonna be happy if they can't afford a home, food, water, and like me and my partner, we were talking about like even eating healthier is so expensive. Like everything good costs money. So
Yeah. So complex. So complex. Hmm.
So, me and my partner talked about how we have this common understanding that there's no real definition for purpose and success because it's something we're always chasing. Like,
Mm.
once we get to what we think our version of success is, we've completely like made a 360 turn and we're focused on achieving something higher than that. So, instead of having like a set definition of like the purpose for school or government or earth or college, it's like once you reach that purpose, you find a new purpose for it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I kind of agreed with like the earlier statement about how we don't really like we like pretend not to think about it, but money is actually like very important for like living a happier life, especially with the thing even like buying healthier food. But I still feel like you can have all the money in the world but still live a very like sad life if you don't have like good people in your corner and like you can like still have all this money but still like genuinely not enjoy who you are as a person or your life. So
Yeah. All right. Two more.
I feel like this is like pretty critical of like our capitalist society and like economy. Well,
Yeah.
but I was just wondering if you had a better alternative in mind because like what would be obviously there is flaws to this. So, like what is the right way to go with it?
Right. There are so many options, right? But I think that this class, particularly this class period, is thinking specifically about how it is a story. The idea that we have the power to shift our story and that it's going to take time to figure out what the better story is and what does better actually mean. So we'll get to some of those pieces as we go on through, but it's so complex. Just all the things that you're bringing up, just really like I'm feeling them very deeply right now, as I'm guessing many of you are too. So yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry I don't have a quick answer to that. I wish I did. Yeah, just one more and then, okay.
I think it's a little unfortunate and kind of unfair because I guess our generation and the generations before us, all we know is the economy. That's all we were born into. So to say like, how do you see the story of economy connected to your answers is literally everything. Um, And then in addition to that, like the previous person said to us, is like, what do we do? And there's no offense to you or the book, but I just felt that the book really gave us a lot of ways of why the way we're living is wrong and not really many solutions. And I said that I feel like the book wants to revert us back to cavemen in a way. So
Thank you for saying that. I take that very deeply. I appreciate that you're saying that. And I think it's because it has to be a collective movement, right? It has to be some way of approaching the situation that is more than just me saying, this is it. Here's the answer. And so to have all of you in this room to co-create the possibilities with or to brainstorm ideas with, I think is where the power lies. And so I'm sorry that you feel a little let down, or I don't think caveman is the way to go, but I think that there's some place in between that could suit and help people to find that comfort that some of you are speaking about. Because this is a huge, right? I snapshotted this last night from this website, Real-Time Billionaires, the Forbes posting. And so, oh, look, it's even changed as of right now. Reflects changes since 5 o'clock yesterday. So Jeff Bezos has made $4.9 billion today. Elon Musk, so these are what's happening in one day. And it changes, like I say, it's different than the slide I just showed you. So if you scroll down, you can check this out in your time, but can you stop right there? Elon Musk, $829.4 billion. So when I did this class in the fall, his net worth has gone up $500 billion since last fall's slide when I snapshotted this. Just interesting, like, how much is $1 billion? Comprehending $1 billion, the easiest way for me to think about $1 billion, if you could save $100 a day, it would take you 27,387 years. $100 a day for 27,000 years is $1 billion. That's just so mind-boggling to me. So the top 10 people have more money than the bottom half of the rest of the world. So this is a challenge. This is a problem. This is a disconnect. Thank you, Scout. So what happens when people use that money, right? What's the power in the use of the money? So I'll highlight this. Having the money, like some of you have said, having the money isn't bad. I'm not judging those people for having it. It's a matter of what you do with it. This is Mackenzie Scott. She's number 80 on the billionaires list. As of yesterday, she is worth $23.8 billion. She has 4% stake in Amazon. Her ex-husband is Jeff Bezos. And right. And she has given away $26 billion since 2019. And so she has supported farmers without vision. She has supported just she has a whole organization called Yield Giving, and she is trying to give her money away. And so what you choose to do with your money does make a difference. So for now, we'll say that economism is just a story. It's a story of taking rather than giving, fear rather than love, separation rather than connection. And we have the shift of story that's possible. So it was an old story that was no longer true. Truth can go out of stories. It was true because true becomes meaningless, even a lie, because the truth has gone into another story. So what can that new story be? Thanks very much. I hope you have a beautiful day. Miss Jen. Thank you very much. Thank you for running around. It actually wasn't too bad. Right. Right. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. You all right?
Very sore.
Oh.